Welcome to the Stereoactive Movie Club. My name is Jeremiah, and I'm here with Alicia, Laura, Mia, and Steven. And we're going to be talking about the 1965 film Pierrot le Fou, directed by Jean-Luc Godard. But before we go on, let's hear from everyone about one movie they've watched recently that they want to talk about here. Steven?
I saw Black Adam, which was the rock vehicle of a DC Comics movie or DC Comics comic book. And it was enjoyable. It wasn't really that deep. It was definitely a comic book movie, but this was more comic book movie than a lot of comic book movies I've seen. And that it was just sort of like you could tell, you could kind of feel that it was written for kids. And it was very like ham-handed. But the special effects were amazing, and The Rock, delivers every time as far as I'm concerned. So I enjoyed the movie.
All right. Alicia?
I finally saw Parasite, which won the Oscar a few years ago. I saw it on the flight back from our trip to Spain. Steven watched it on the way there, so I was like, oh, I should watch it too. And I really liked it. I thought it was like a horror film for some reason, which it's clearly not. And although there is some gore in there at the end, but yeah, I thought it was really a good take on like class warfare. It was interesting.
And Laura?
I watched Planet of the Apes for the first time.
The original?
The 1968 movie with
Nice.
Charlton Heston.
All right. What'd you think?
It was awesome. Yeah, it was really intense. Very good. Yeah, it was. I just thought it was so wild. It was so impressive. Really smart. I mean, just the pacing of the film, the scenes, the violence of it. It's rated G.
Yeah.
And it's like it starts immediately with the tons of, acres of naked man.
Acres. Yes.
Who made that movie? Who's the director?
Franklin J. Schaffner, I believe his name is. It's the same guy who did Patton, and a certain movie that I saw watched, not with you, Alicia, but was watched in advance of going to a taping of How Did This Get Made with you. He directed, I'm pretty sure, that terrible movie with one of the three tenors in it. Was it Pavarotti?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he directed that.
But that was a fun, terrible movie.
Yeah, that movie sucked though. So bad.
But
what a fall from
really
grace.
Funny.
Anyway, Mia.
I watched Scream, which I hadn't seen since like 1997 or something. And it was so good. Like, I seriously think the last time I watched it was like at a sleepover, and just a lot of the meta scary movie references were just totally over my head, or I just wasn't paying attention to it really. And yeah, it was just so good. And the first 10 minutes or whatever, I scare easily in movies, as we were kind of talking about before we got started, and so I was just like so terrified. But yeah, it was amazing. I kind of want to watch all of the Screams now, because that's the only one I've ever seen. So
2 is good too.
I know 2 is good. Yeah, I've heard 2 is good. Wasn't that one of the ones?
3 is
Yeah. Are there 4?
There's 5.
There's 5 now. I will not be watching any more 5 of those.
2 2 is good, and 3 is okay.
I saw 2 when it came out. I'm fine.
Yeah, I thought 2 was one of those ones where people were like, some people are like, oh, it's better than the first one, like one of those sequels.
Yeah, it's just like Empire Strikes Back or Godfather 2, definitely.
It's not better than the first one, in my opinion. The first one is the best one, but
totally
2 and 3 are
It's so
fun.
good. Like, when is Nev Campbell gonna have like a 90s star return?
A Nevassance.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
She's on like a show on Netflix right now. She's slowly.
We're in a Nevassance. I love it.
It's not quite, but
it's an attempt.
We're getting closer.
We're starting.
We're
starting. It's the first wave.
Well, I am going to talk about RRR, which I know you guys already heard me talk about at our production meeting, but I finally got to see that. First, I saw it in the movie theater at the Austin Film Society, and I saw it with a crowd. Some of the people obviously knew the movie very well, and it's become very popular. A lot of people are calling it like the film of the year, like critics and film goers, film fans, whatever. But like seeing it with a crowd was so good. People were like almost singing along with the movie when there was music, or like just like citing some of the lines, but not in an obnoxious way. Usually that would annoy the hell out of me with any normal movie, but this movie was just like it excites so much enthusiasm in people. It's infectious, and it was so fun that I immediately came home and was like, Mia, my birthday is next week. I would like to watch this again with you. Would you watch it with me? And she did, and we loved it, and so fun. Such a fun movie. Could not recommend it more. My line about it, which I know you guys already heard me say, is it's like the movie that Baz Luhrmann and somehow Zack Snyder have both been trying and failing to make for years, because they aren't good enough. So there you go.
I just like that you used your birthday card.
I did.
To get it.
Definitely did. But it was worth it, right?
It's so
okay,
good.
She's nodding.
It's so good. Yeah, yeah. It's an awesome movie. Like I was like, I'd watch this again, like the next day. It's that good.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's on Netflix, so go watch it. So, for those who may not have listened to the show before, this is a podcast where the five of us are discussing movies that have appeared on Sight and Sound Magazine's poll of the greatest movies ever made that comes out every 10 years. The next poll will be out sometime this year in 2022, so we're basically trying to watch some of the movies from past polls before the new one is out. And again, this time we are talking about Pierrot le Fou. But before we get into the history and background of the movie, what did each of us know about it going into this viewing? Who had seen it before? And if you hadn't, what were you expecting, if anything? And Steven, since you picked this one, can you start us off and also remind us why you chose it?
I chose it because it was a Jean-Luc Godard movie, and I knew that he was a very influential director of French New Wave. Plus, the trailer looked very colorful, so I decided I wanted to see it. It just looked like a really exciting movie. And I did not know very much about it other than that.
Okay. Laura?
I feel like I mentioned this a lot. I worked at Scarecrow Video. And through that, I saw a lot of Godard films. I'd seen this one before, or most of it before, through that.
And did you remember enjoying it or not?
I remember not enjoying it.
Okay.
I remember having a hard time getting through it.
Gotcha. All right, Alicia, how about you?
I had never seen it before, and not really sure if I ever heard of it even before seeing it on our list. And then somehow I got it in my head that it was like a movie about a clown. And I was pleasantly surprised that it was not a movie about a clown. So that's what I knew going in.
Wait, did you think this was it?
I wish it had been it, to be honest.
Oh.
Sorry,
Okay.
shots fired.
Yeah,
Shots
I mean,
fired.
arguably it is a movie about a clown. You could.
Well, doesn't his nickname mean like sad clown or something? So
Yeah,
something like
I think
that.
It's the name of the sad clown.
Yeah.
That,
Well, Mia, what about you?
I had not seen this movie before, although Jeremiah and I watched Breathless a couple of months back, which is another Godard film. But yeah, I didn't know anything about it going into it.
Yeah, I didn't really know much about it. I knew it was a Godard film. I'd seen some stills and maybe some clips from it, but I didn't know the plot of it or anything. I don't know. I didn't really know much going in, to be honest. I didn't even know the name of the movie was the movie that it is. Like, I'd seen those clips and those stills, not knowing which Godard film they were from. So, okay, so that's where we stood on the film for what it's worth before watching it for this episode. And we'll get more into the film in just a moment. But first, let's take a break. And we're back. Let's get more into our movie and its history. I'll start by reading the Criterion Collection's description of the film. Dissatisfied in marriage and life, Ferdinand, Jean-Paul Belmondo, takes to the road with the babysitter, his ex-lover, Marianne Renoir, Anna Karenina, and leaves the bourgeois world behind. Yet this is no normal road trip, The 10th feature in 6 years by genius auteur Jean-Luc Godard is a stylish mashup of anti-consumerist satire, au courant politics, and comic book aesthetics, as well as a violent zigzag tale of, as Godard called them, the last romantic couple. With blissful color imagery by cinematographer Raoul Cotard and Belmondo and Carina at their most animated, Pierrot le Fou is one of the high points of the French New Wave and was Godard's last frolic before he moved ever further into radical cinema. Again, that was from the Criterion Collection. I'd also like to read a bit from Roger Ebert's review of the film, which was published in 1969 as the movie was first released in the United States, 4 years after it was out in France. So, again, this is how Ebert began his review. First, a brief preface. Every time I review a film by Jean-Luc Godard, I receive outraged letters from readers who hated it. It is suggested that my reviews and myself join Godard on the trash heap of history, that the customers was robbed. A common complaint is that Godard made no sense, and so on. So let this be a warning. You probably won't like Pierrot le Fou. One of Godard's films, seen by itself, can be a frustrating and puzzling experience, but when you begin to get into his universe, when you've seen a lot of Godard, you find yourself liking him more and more. One day something clicks, and Godard comes together. And then perhaps you decide that if he is not the greatest living director, he is certainly the most audacious, the most experimental, the one who understands best how movies work. Pierrot le Fou marked the beginning of Godard's current period. Before it came the black and white films, cool, quick, and austere, with an emphasis on interpersonal relationships. After it came the Godard of color, widescreen, and increasing preoccupation with politics, American culture, violence, Vietnam, and movies. All of Godard's films since Pierrot le Fou have essentially been movies about themselves, a statement hard to explain unless you've seen them. Again, that was from Roger Ebert's review, in which, by the way, he gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars. Godard himself said the film was connected with the violence and loneliness that lie so close to happiness today. It is very much a film about France. So yes, with its fourth wall breaks, often jarring editing style, and tendency to internally jump among mass culture and or pop art references in both extremely metatextual and self-referential ways, this is at once recognizable as a Godard film, a French New Wave film, and in a broader way, a certain type of art house film that is at once exciting for many and probably challenging, if not off-putting, for many more. And I don't mean that as my judgment on the film so much as an attempt to realistically place it in the culture. Pierrot le Fou was France's submission to the Academy Awards honoring 1965 films, but it was not ultimately one of the 5 films nominated for Best Foreign Language Film that year. And the big winner at the Oscars that year was The Sound of Music. Meanwhile, to give a further sense of what was popular in the United States in 1965, the top grossing films in North America were, from 1 to 5, The Sound of Music, Dr. Zhivago, Thunderball, Those Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines, and The Great Race. As for our purposes, the movie has never actually appeared in the top 10 of Sight and Sound's critics or directors surveys, but it was tied as a runner-up with Hiroshima, Amour, and The Gold Rush on the 1972 list. In the 2012 polling, it was tied at number 42 by critics and number 1 by directors. Also, it's worth noting that Roger Ebert reviewed the film again in 2007 and started his review off with this. Godard's Pierrot le Fou is the same film I liked so much when it opened here in 1968 and assigned a 3.5-star rating. But while I once wrote of it as Godard's most virtuoso display of his mastery of Hollywood genres, I now see it more as the story of silly characters who have seen too many Hollywood movies. His review at that time gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars. So, Stephen, since this was your pick, can you start us off with your thoughts on the film and whether it met your expectations such as they were, since you didn't really know much about it going in?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any expectations going into the movie, but after you read that kind of review from Roger Ebert, it was very challenging and off-putting. I think that really kind of sums it up, at least for me. Although, like, I can honestly say I didn't hate watching the movie itself. Like, there wasn't a frame that wasn't just dynamic to me. Like, I really did enjoy just looking at it and just seeing how the colors were put together and, just seeing the actors like doing their thing. But as for the movie, I felt like it was pretty incoherent for me. And sometimes I felt like I wasn't paying close enough attention to it because they just jumped from scene to scene and I wasn't sure, like, did I miss something? Did they explain something that I just didn't get? Maybe it was the translation that was off. But overall, like, I just found it really kind of difficult to get through. I felt like I was spending a lot of the movie just trying to figure out, like, from scene to scene what was happening, and it was just kind of put together in a way that, like, I think it was just more important to just sort of watch the scenes and get something out of it that way than it was for the movie to be very coherent. So, and also, like, I was trying to figure out, was it a love story? Was it a heist story? So there was just a lot of confusion on my part as I was watching it.
Okay. And Alicia?
I did not enjoy this movie very much. I found it really difficult to care about the characters. I found it really shallow in that sort of way that people who are like academically intelligent and they know it, they do a lot of performative talk, and that was a lot of what was happening here. But there was like no substance to these people. I don't know what they thought they were doing. It was just it was aesthetically it's a really cool film aesthetically, but again, I just find it shallow underneath. I didn't find it to be meaningful to me at all. So anyway.
Okay. And Laura?
Yeah, it was still really difficult to get through this time. I, aside from the visuals being really interesting and a lot of, you know, Godard in the previous films, he uses Hollywood tropes, girl with a gun, heist, or different things, to play around with the film. He's quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing and I'm going to butcher it, something about how style is the, outside of content, or content's the inside of style, and how the two things are just as important as the other. And that is how he makes films. And I think it's a perfect example of a failure of that here. But I think that was his intention and how he went about making it. And there's also just this fundamental thing, even though it's high-minded on purpose. It's got, anti-American, anti-violence, anti-war messaging. There's this fundamental thing between men and women that it's just really misogynist. It's so stupid. It's like men are from Mars and women are from Venus kind of thing. Like women just want to talk about emotion and men want to talk about ambition. And it's just it's so simplistic, whereas everything else is so high-minded that it's just really annoying and frustrating to watch, because I think for all that he's got these big ideas, I think he doesn't know a fucking thing about women, and this movie illustrates that more than any of the others.
Okay, and Mia?
I loved this movie. No, I'm just kidding. I honestly, I agree so much with everything that Alicia and Steven and Laura said. I really don't feel like I have that much to add to it. Like, I completely agree. It was just really difficult to watch. It was pretty to look at. It made me wish could be on vacation in France, but otherwise, I didn't really care about the characters at all. I found them obnoxious, but also like very boring, but also just shallow. I think it's a very good way of putting it, Alicia. I didn't really care what was going to happen. I don't know. I think like I felt like there was stuff going on that I was like, oh, if I was like a little smarter or was willing to like give this a bit more of a chance, like, all the cuts to the paintings or other art, or I felt like there was more there and I was just not grasping it. But like, I just didn't really give enough of a shit to like try. I feel like, there wasn't enough of like a hook in the movie to make me want to like, because there's been other movies we've watched that I'm like, okay, I don't really enjoy this, but kind of once I like read more about it, or there's enough that makes me want to dig into it and kind of figure out a way to like grasp and get my arms around it and at least be able to appreciate it, even if it's not a movie that I would ever watch again. But this, I kind of can't believe it's like rated so highly and on the poll. Like, it's not for me. I didn't love Breathless when we watched it, and maybe it's just like the memory of that has faded a bit, but like now I'm like, oh, that movie's so much better than this one. It's just more approachable, easier to engage with. It's kind of a similar heist, people on the run kind of story. But I guess it's just maybe it's more digestible, it's less out there. So yeah.
Yeah. As we were watching this movie, I just kept thinking, what is this whirlwind of nonsense? 'Cause that's really what it felt like. I was just like struggling sometimes to kind of keep up with what was happening plot wise. But, and at some point you're like, well, I guess the plot's kind of secondary, but also I don't know what the fuck's happening though at this point. So like it's not that helpful in that way. But like to the point of it being something like other movies we've watched where I also like had that experience of like not enjoying it as much watching it, but then uh, reading about it afterwards, and then our discussion of it especially would lead me to enjoying the movie more in retrospect. Like I do have a little bit of that because I've read about it, but there is an aspect of it that I agree with the term shallow being applied to this because I don't even think that Godard would care if you said that about this movie. Like I don't think he's trying to be emotionally deep or anything like that. He is, to kind of the point that Mia was making in a way of this, like relating it to Breathless. With Breathless, he was like doing his version of an American crime gangster movie in a way, like his romanticized secondhand version of it. And now he's kind of, at least in parts of this, doing that removed because he's doing a version of his own movie from before. Like, because he's clearly referencing Breathless, I think. It's the same actor, and he's like in similar situations, like laying in bed with the girl, like running around him and all this, like there's no way that's not in his mind as he's making that scene. And maybe that's why he made that scene. But I don't know. I think the stuff about it being like so influenced and related to pop art does give me a little something to latch onto and have interest in it. And the way I think of it is like, I agree. Everyone seems to be touching on the visuals of it, that those were striking and maybe enjoyable, disconnected from the film itself in a way. And so maybe we could talk more about that. But I do think that this is a movie that if it was playing on a loop in a gallery, I would like be captivated by the visuals across the room and be drawn to go and watch it for a while. But it would be nice to be able to like be like, okay, I've had enough of this, go away. And then like maybe go back and watch a little more later and like just take it in like that. And I feel like honestly, I'd get the same dramatic thrust from the film in those spurts because like it doesn't maintain anything throughout. It's very disjointed and purposefully so. That's the other thing about the movie is that like we're saying all this, and I don't think any of us is wrong to have this negative opinion of the film, but I think it's hard to deny that probably Godard did exactly what he set out to do with the movie. So in terms of it being intentional, someone used that word before, I don't remember who. I think that the intention of the film is achieved probably with flying colors. Like I think he made what he wanted, or a version of what he wanted, because we'll get into it later, but like not sure how planned this movie was in advance, parts of it at least. But yeah, I think it's a more interesting pop art piece to me than like a film that I want to go sit down and watch in full. But yeah, maybe let's start by, or Alicia, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like this is one of those movies where the characters are maybe intentionally very unlikable.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's not an easy thing to watch. It's how long do you want to sit through that? So
Right.
I do agree. I think he probably I think he made the movie he wanted to make, but it's just not entertaining.
Yeah, and even like to that point, there's a couple scenes I think where she sings to him. So I'm talking about the one where they're outside and she's singing some line about something about
her fate.
Yeah, I think so. And it just got so annoying to me because she just kept singing the same line over and over. I just wanted to yell like, "Shut the fuck up! Shut the fuck up! I'm so tired of the scene already. Can we move on?" Yeah. So I don't. But like it was not a. The song was like a well sung song. Like you could say there's a beauty to it, but it was still annoying within the context that it was taking place. Because at that point, I was just like, I don't feel like I've found anything in this movie to latch onto in a meaningful way. But
I think we were like an hour and 15 minutes in by that point.
Yeah, exactly. So we're past the halfway point on the film, and I already feel like I've lost the thread on it personally.
To Alicia's point about being likable, I would say most Godard films do not have likable characters at the forefront in a lot of ways. Like Breathless.
This is the only Godard I've never seen Breathless.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know that, but I mean, I would give Breathless a shot. It didn't put me off Godard completely, but it's just.
I definitely think you should. I mean, I loved it. Contempt or V versus V. They're complicated relationships. They're kind of backstabbing people. I guess these are the most shallowly dislikable people. Like there's not much. Well, I'm always like any man who just feels sorry for himself for the first half hour of a film is never really going to get me, all into it. So it definitely had that to go on.
To go back to Breathless, like I do think that Belmondo in that film, even though at heart, sure, he's dislikable in a large way because he's just kind of being like an asshole through so much of the movie, but he has a charisma and charm that's hard to deny. And then I think Seberg is also charming too. Like they're more likable, I think, to me in that movie than these two characters ever.
Right,
approached.
But he's also a murderer.
Yeah, I know, but I still find them
likable,
to be charismatic and charming in a way that I think that Belmondo never approaches in this film. Like I think he's a sad sack through most of it, and I do think I think the movie gets away with a little more even than I realize it does, probably because he is naturally charismatic as a person, as a performer. But like, I think it would be just an intolerable film if not for probably some baseline charisma he has. But still, I didn't really like. Yeah, her too. Yeah, I'm just saying him because of versus Breathless, which he's also in. But yeah,
I see what you're saying, but I also kind of I still think my point.
Yeah. I'm not saying that Godard makes films about good people.
No, yeah, exactly.
But anyway, like I want to go back to the visuals because I think we all said some version of like, well, it's pretty to look at, or like it was it had nice visuals in some way. So like, can that ever be enough for anybody? Like I think that, like I said, I think if I saw this in the gallery, I'd enjoy it in that setting. Watching it in a 2-hour stretch sitting on my couch at home, or if I'd gone to a theater to see it, I think like those are frustrating experiences for me. But like, does anybody have anything to say about the visuals beyond like, I like the visuals? I'm just curious.
I don't think that you can sit through 2 hours of that. I mean, obviously none of us enjoyed this experience.
Right. Well, what about the visuals did you enjoy?
Well, I liked him smoking in the bathtub. I liked they're both beautiful and stylish, and the cars are beautiful and stylish, and the Mediterranean is beautiful and
stylish.
I liked stylish. And the cutaways to some of the art I liked the literary references. I enjoyed that, but I mean, like I said, there's just nothing underpinning it all. There's nothing that I mean, you can make unlikable characters likable. There's ways to do that narratively.
Yeah, he just never does that. Watch HBO and that's their whole business model at this point.
Mad Men. I mean, any of the last 2 decades of television, you can do that.
My favorite scene visually was when they decide to fake the car accident and explode the car, and they come across this horrific accident on this little piece of an overpass that there's like no reason why that would be there. It's not connected to anything. It's just like literally this like, I don't know what, 15-foot tall, 15-foot long chunk of an overpass with a car up against it. Someone like slouched over who must have hit her head. A man like bent in half out the window, like horrific. And they're just like, oh yeah, let's just like leave the car here and okay, let's like set it on fire and stuff. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, okay. And they're like, hurry, hurry, the cops are gonna come. But just to me, visually, that chunk of the overpass, I just loved it. I was like, this is like, why is this here in like the French countryside? So I thought that was really
That was
great.
the point where I had to rewind it because I thought I had missed something, when they approached that. So that's why I just was.
They're just assholes and are like, oh, sweet. And then I feel like that point is when he reveals how like truly awful he is, because correct me if I missed something here, but he's like, yeah, let's like shoot the car and light it on fire. And then like as soon as she does that, or maybe he's the one who actually shoots, but whatever, as soon as it happens, he's like, oh yeah, by the way, like all the money is in the trunk of the car. And I was just like, wait, what? And I was like, oh my God, this like shitty little sad rich boy is like just gonna like run away and like doesn't care about money, even though they're like, we don't have any money. And he's just gonna burn, I think they say later it's $50,000 or 50,000 francs, I don't know. But anyways, like a ton of money. And he was just so like, haha. And I was like, oh my God, he's just like wants to play it being poor, play it being this like, on the lam gangster dude. And like, you suck, man. So yeah, that scene encapsulated a lot for me.
I like the use of color throughout the film. I mean, I think the clearest use of it was at the party scene near the beginning when he decides to run away, really, of the like, the little vignettes that were all one color for the most part until he's talking to actual film director Sam Fuller for a minute, and he's in full color, which I guess is a comment of its own somehow. But yeah, I don't know. There was so much of it that like, what's frustrating to me about a movie like this, I guess, is it's playing at being deep in its ideas, but it kind of isn't. Because like, I get it. These people are saying things that sound like advertisements because they are just shallow people and don't have like real thoughts in their heads, and they're just like super influenced by culture and advertising. I get it. Okay, cool. What's the point? That's kind of how I felt through any of the movie. Anytime there was something like that, and I couldn't even tell you what other things, like that was the clearest one of those, I think, out of the whole movie, right?
Yeah, they felt like perfume commercials in the 90s that you used to watch. It just, nothing just really fit together in a way that was coherent. And that was the biggest problem that I had. And you could just tune into any point in the movie and kind of get the same reaction that you would have gotten if you had watched it in reverse order. It was just like, what's the point after a while of even trying to pay attention and decipher this movie?
Right. For a long time, I've had in the back of my head, if I ever had the chance to program like, not a film festival, but like a retrospective, I'd do like a Lovers on the Run retrospective with like Bonnie and Clyde, Natural Born Killers, Badlands, They Live by Night. There's other stuff I'm forgetting. I would not include this. True Romance, sure, but I would not include this. Or maybe I would, just to prove that the others are all so much more
I think Breathless could fit.
Yeah, Breathless could fit, sure.
Or like Band Apart,
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, so I'll take your word for it.
I'm kind of curious as to why Breathless wasn't on the list and this one was.
And same.
Yeah.
Miss.
What
Alicia?
was going on with the Vietnam play? Sorry, like, were they supposed to be coming off racist, or was it just inherently racist?
Oh my God, that was, I just couldn't even, that was tough.
The way I
maybe
saw
a little
it was
bit of
that
A, a
it
little bit
was
of B.
making fun of Americans.
Sure, fine.
By
I'm fine with
playing
that.
toward the lowest common denominator. So being racist in that because Americans would like it.
Oh, okay. I was thinking more, were they saying, I just was confused as to whether they were saying society is racist the Vietnam War is racist, which valid,
Yes.
or Americans are racist, which
Yes.
okay. But I also was like, well, maybe they're just being racist. I don't know. I was like, maybe the characters are just being racist. I couldn't tell what he was going for, really. I couldn't tell which line that fell on.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I think it crossed all those lines. But I think under the guise of making fun of Americans, it still surpassed that and was just shitty on all levels.
Yeah.
Because the American was bombastic and over the top as well. So I think it kind of, Laura's point is probably what they were going for.
Just couldn't tell if they were making fun of only Americans or both American people and Vietnamese people. I just couldn't tell whether both were being made fun of or only one.
I mean, I would also just throw in that maybe they're making fun of those, but also French people. Like, I think he's kind of got his knives out for everybody.
I could see there being a level of that also.
We watched this movie yesterday, and so much of it is already like flitted out of my head. Like, I don't know. It was just like a stream or a barrage of, disconnected moments to me in such a big way, which I know is probably not completely fair. But like, that's just how it felt on a first watch. I do wonder if this is a movie though that like bears. Well, I mean, I guess Laura can answer this because she saw it before and you still didn't like it. But like, I wondered if it is a movie that I would like more on subsequent viewings if I ever watch it again. Just because like I'm past the shock of how it is structured or unstructured or whatever you want to call it. But like, Laura, do you think you would like it more? Did you like it more, even if you still didn't like it this time? Do you think if you saw it again, you might even increase how much you like it? And then to everybody, do you think you would appreciate it more on a second viewing?
The only way I think this film is palatable on any viewing moving forward is watching it at a bar with the sound off.
Yeah, I think it's good for that. I agree. What about the rest of you? Would anybody watch it again, and do you think you might appreciate it more? Steven?
I did try to get through this a second viewing, and I did like it a little more the second time around. But it's like some of these movies that we do watch, I think it's better to watch more of the director's movies to give it more context and to read more about it and to know what the context of what was happening in the world at the time to really get this movie. So I feel like as a casual viewer of some of these, it doesn't really work. I mean, a movie like this, I feel like you do, like with Laura, like she's seen a few more of his movies, so she's able to contextualize it a little bit more and know if it's better or worse than some of the other movies. But for someone who's just sort of like, for me, I don't see a whole lot of movies, so I just had a really hard time with it, and I didn't. And also what Mia had said before, like I didn't feel the compulsion to read more and watch more about it other than doing this podcast, which I don't think I would have watched this movie again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's reminding me of, and the thing I read from Roger Ebert, his review from the 60s about the movie, he said all of Godard's films since Pierrot le Fou have essentially been movies about themselves. And I don't know if he's actually including this one in that, but I'll throw it in there. But I think either way, he seems to be like in conversation with his own movies from movie to movie. And Laura, I think you've seen more of his films than any of us. So like, would you agree with that? Does that seem to be the case? Like he's always sort of like self-referential with his own filmography?
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, they become more and more political. It's also like, who gives a shit, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I know. Well, that's what I was kind of getting at, is like I think that there's something interesting artistically about that, but as entertainment, which movies usually are, a joining of art and entertainment, I think that goes a little less so for Godard, because you like if you're trying to find enjoyment in his films, I think you come away thinking like this guy's just up his own ass, know, like more than anything.
And this film is more up its own ass than the others.
And that's not even to say that you can't like still recognize the art of it and appreciate that and appreciate like who Godard was in film as a whole, like, because he's an important figure in film. Like, you can still have like an opinion of his films that's like, yeah, not for me. But
I would watch it a second time, but not a third. I think, just to like see if I would like it more on a second viewing. But then, I mean, unless I fell in love with it on the second time, I don't think I would watch it a third time. I would really just want to see if there were things that I missed the first time, or something I didn't appreciate about it the first time in watching it. But yeah, I don't think I would go beyond that, probably.
Right. Well, Stephen, do you want to ask your question for everyone?
Sure. So my question was, as legend goes, like many of Godard's other films, this one did not have a screenplay well before shooting, and many scenes were improvised by the actors. Though this was his style, do you think the movie could have benefited from having a fully written script beforehand? What do you think would have been lost by doing this?
Well, I'll answer. I absolutely think it would benefit if it had more character and plot, as opposed to those things being secondary, which is what I think they are in this film. Godard's quoted another quote that I'm going to mutilate, something, all you need to make a film is a girl and a gun. And he does that here again. But, it's just not enough in this case at all. It's almost like a disdain for the audience is palpable with a film like this. So, yeah, an actual script with something driving it would have been helpful here, yeah, I think.
I do think that that's a worthwhile way to approach films, assuming you have some baseline plot or some baseline goal in every scene that the actors are working towards. But because sometimes in improvisation you do find things that you wouldn't have found from just a straight up script. And I think like Mike Leigh, who's made a lot of really great movies, does a lot of improvisation during the rehearsal process in order to figure out where they want to take things. So I think it's really, really a worthwhile thing to do. I just don't know if these people were bad at it, or they should have done more of it, or I feel like they probably should have had a full blown script and then let them improvise around it and if they found anything cool in the improv, use it. Otherwise, go with the written word.
Yeah, well, to use the Mike Leigh example, he sort of does, from my understanding of his method, he does the kind of opposite of what I understand the method to be of like someone like Adam McKay, because Adam McKay, especially in his comedies with Will Ferrell, was famous for like, let's do the script and then we start doing improv after we've hit that, and then like so much of that made it into the movie. And he's even talked about, like, it's interesting to like get into of like how he talks about how the technology that was coming out at that time actually enabled a lot of that technique in a way that he couldn't do before and doesn't even make any sense anymore. But that's a whole other thing. But Mike Leigh, like you said, he does all this improv in rehearsals, but then they lock a script and they film that, and I'm not saying that means that they don't do like some change on set or something, but that's my understanding, is that they do end up with a script, but it's basically a script that's been written by him and the actors together through finding it in rehearsal. So yeah, I mean, I do think generally that's a better way to go for most stuff. Like, but I do think that there's also people who've made pretty improvised on the fly films that are entertaining. I just like don't find this that entertaining because it just doesn't. There's never anything that like sort of lasts long enough, sustains itself long enough to kind of sink your teeth into and kind of hold on to and like be along for the ride. Like, I just always feel like I'm like, wait, what? That's like literally what I'm asking as we're watching this movie. Yeah. I'm not even joking. I was just literally like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like every like 5 minutes. Yeah. Like I don't appreciate being made to feel like I'm too dumb to like keep up with your fucking movie you didn't think to write or whatever. But whatever, you're still a genius, Godard. That's fine. Alicia,
having done a fair bit of improv, I feel like they never I mean, and I've only done comedy improv really, but you're supposed to find a game in your scene, and which is basically like an unusual thing, and then work or like do the comedy kind of around that thing. And I feel like obviously in dramatic improv it would be not the same thing, but you still need to find something that you're kind of working around. And I feel like there was nothing, they were not working around anything. They were just like, go out there and be blasé and say some literary stuff to each other and
Right.
look really good while you're doing it. And they just never got to like, in none of the scenes ever got to like a meaningful conversation, a meaningful point, you know, like they never. So I don't know if they should have been edited earlier or if they should have just never been improv at all. It's just, it's yeah, sorry, that was maybe too inside baseball on improv or something, but
No, I think it's useful, but I think like as I'm going by what we're all saying and how we're criticizing it, like I do think if I take a step back from my own like frustration with the film and go back to the question of like the intention behind it, I think he achieved what he intended to achieve, and I think that goes for the reason I'm saying this again is like I think that he edited this film in a very specific way, like of the transitions from scenes are supposed to be a little discombobulated. I don't understand why, but I think that's what he wanted, and that's fine. It's his movie, and I think that probably most things, if I interrogated them or any of us interrogated them very closely, like any piece of the film, there's probably some answer like that there of like, yeah, I don't get it, but that's what he meant to do, you know? And so I don't know. It's still like frustrating in its way, but it at least makes it make a little sense in an odd way. If that even makes sense, I don't know.
For this film, he made a clear effort to take the viewer out or to break the fourth wall and make sure that with different methods and scene cutting that to remind the viewer that they were watching a film.
Also, I think like from an actor's point of view, you have to make choices about your character, and usually that's like in conjunction with a script. So if you're just up there kind of making your own choices without a script, I think they just didn't. Especially like if you're doing improv, you have to make really, really strong choices, and sometimes you just can't, or you just don't have the way, you don't have something to do it with. And I kind of feel like maybe that was happening here too. I don't know.
There's a lot of things like that in the movie. Like I think the scene where there was the dead body at the very beginning, almost the beginning of the movie, where they kind of walk in and she's making a meal or something, and she walks by and the guy. It's just like emotionally, you're just like, wait, what? Like, and they were so blasé about it. You're just like, that's why a lot of that movie, you were just wondering if there was just something missing in it. And
like
and
a soul.
I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that was their choice, you know.
Yeah, and yeah, it's true. It's just like that's the choice of the movie that he made, but it doesn't make for a good viewing experience for anybody. So that's what was confusing to me the most. And I'm one of those people that just kind of needs like more coherence when it comes to a movie. So that's what I would have liked, but I mean that's not the movie that he wanted to make.
Okay, so those are our thoughts on Pierrot le Fou. We'll share our final thoughts on the movie and answer a bonus question after this break. So, what was your favorite scene, moment, element of the movie, whatever it might be? Alicia, you want to start us off?
I liked Alonzo. That was maybe my favorite thing from the whole movie.
I don't even recall what that is.
That was just a thing he said like several times. It means like "let's go, Daddy-o" is how they translated it. But,
yeah. Okay,
but it's like a French play on words, Alonzo. And no, I mean I liked the aesthetics, and I liked Anna Karina's beautiful. And if I had to pick a scene, I probably would just pick the very first smoking in the bathroom scene where he's reading to the child. I liked that moment. I didn't like a lot else.
Okay. Laura?
He uses smoking in bathtubs quite a lot. If I could recommend Contempt is a very good movie. You want to check that out. For me, my favorite scene was when they're driving and it would cut abruptly, the music would stop, and then they would do it from a different angle, and then they would repeat the line that just happened before the music would begin, and it would purposefully take you out of the film and to show you the cut by cut nature of it. And I thought that was really artfully done.
Okay. Mia?
In addition to the overpass scene, I really liked the scene when they steal the car at the gas station. I just thought it was very cool, very well choreographed.
Yeah. Steven?
Overall, I just really enjoyed looking at this movie. One of the scenes that I really liked was when I guess Ferdinand was just eating that huge block of cheese at the waterfront. It was just so random. And at first I was like, is he cutting into something? And then it was just cheese. And I was like, okay. And he's just eating a really big block of cheese. And this is great. Another thing that I liked was when when Ferdinand was talking to his wife and she was wearing that new girdle. And he said something about like, first there was Greek civilization, then the Renaissance, and now we're in the age of ass. So I thought that was pretty funny.
He hadn't seen nothing yet.
I think in our translation it said rump.
Rump.
Oh, it was rump.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like ass better though.
Yeah.
It's like it turns it into like a Shaft movie then or something. Alicia, were you about to say something?
Oh, I just remembered the scene with the fox and the parrot, with them. I was
The
just like, what is
fox.
this?
Yeah. The fox was so cute.
So cute.
It was very cute. I loved it, but I was like, why is this happening?
Why is anything happening?
How long have they been here? Like, they have pets.
Yeah.
now.
How do they have
What's
money?
happening?
Yeah, they're like
that
farming
too.
and they're in like really amazing clothes.
Her
I was like,
wardrobe. Yeah.
if this took place in the 21st century, there's no way they would have had access to that beach without money. No way. No way.
I'm just gonna stick to use of color, and if I have to pick a scene, I'd go with the party scene, I guess.
That was done very well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
enjoyed that too.
I think my favorite thing about the movie is its use of color, and some of the beyond that with the cinematography, some of the framing was interesting, but
I also think his use of primary color.
yeah, that's what I mean basically.
I liked when he blew himself up at the end too.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't know if that was
It was beautifully filmed. That's
Yeah.
and
It really
emotionally
was, yeah.
satisfying for me.
I know.
Yeah, at that point I was like, just burn it all out.
Yeah.
Take it down.
Yeah, I think anybody should just like freeze frame any frame in that movie and just look at it, and it's just like all of the frames are just gorgeous. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Yeah.
scissors.
Yeah.
So has the movie, as far as you're concerned, stood the test of time, or another way of framing it? Do you think it resonates today? Alicia?
I don't know how to answer that this time because I don't even know what the reception was to begin with. I mean, I guess it seems like it wasn't great, or it was great. I don't know. It feels like it was very mixed. Let's just say that. And I feel like none of us enjoyed it very much. I think Godard is obviously like an important filmmaker. I do think it is beautiful. I get it from that perspective, but did this ever resonate? Like, what?
I mean,
No.
Does it
apparently
stand the,
enough
what test
to
of time
be.
is it? Like, what?
Yeah,
I don't know. Sorry.
it resonated with enough critics to make it, pretty high on the list of greatest films ever made.
Was that critics or directors or
Critics.
both? Oh, okay,
It was
well.
higher for critics. I think it was 42 for critics in 2012 and 91 for directors.
Okay,
Oh, well.
question though. Is it
Okay.
just critics being like the emperor has no clothes or not being like the emperor has no clothes? Maybe.
I don't even want to get
I
into
don't
that
either because I
conversation.
don't want to give this film any more of my life, but just going to say that.
There, I think that puts it on the table. Steven.
Yeah. I think that when you compare it or look at all of Godard's other movies. Maybe it does when you look at him, when you look at all the movies and you watch all the movies, maybe it does. But just on its own, I'm not really sure that it does.
All right, Mia, do we have to
Well,
ask?
you skipped Laura, but
Oh, did I? Sorry. Well, Laura
I
then.
can't cut in line.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, Mia.
I second that, Your Honor.
Much more succinct than me.
Well, I would just go back to what I said near the start. Like, I think as a film, I don't think it resonates today that much. I don't think it stands the test of time necessarily. As an art piece, I think it does. So I'm kind of parsing it finely there, but that's what I'm going to do. So, bye.
I would say go watch Breathless or Contempt or anything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy Breathless more. Definitely.
Or My Life to Live. Or Woman
Stephen,
Who.
you also had a bonus question for us for this episode. Do you want to ask that?
Sure. Since we're approaching Halloween and we're taping this during the Halloween season, which horror franchise do you think should be put to rest and they shouldn't do any more movies with?
And Stephen, do you have an answer for that?
I do. And it's kind of funny because Mia brought this up earlier. It's the Scream franchise. And as much as I love them, I think that the well is pretty dry at this point after doing 5 movies. And I love Neve Campbell, but I think that, I don't think she's going to be in the 6th movie, but I just feel like, there's more movies out there that she should be doing than another Scream movie anyway.
Yeah, Wild Things 2, finally.
Dare we dream?
Maybe we could get a Denise Richards assance if that happens.
Oh my God. I would love that.
Mia.
So they may have already put this to rest. I'm not sure. But the Saw movies, does anyone know? Are they still making those?
I think they are. I mean, there was one out in the last year or two. There was Spiral from the Book of Saw. That was the one that Chris Rock made for some reason.
I saw the first one like 1,000 years ago. And I thought it was just like one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like, so violent, so horrific, gave me the worst headache, like was just completely like is not a movie that should exist that in such wide viewership. At least, like, I think it's bad for humanity that these movies exist, and I want them all destroyed.
Wow. Well, I'm going to butt in and just say I was also going to say Saw, but not that strongly. Jesus Christ. Like, I don't care. People, I think they can, however many there are now, 15 of them or something. I don't fucking know. They can still exist. I don't have to watch them. People like them. That's fine. I don't think they have to be burned from the face of the earth like my wife, but that's fine. But Laura, what do you think?
Well, I guess I don't really watch that many horror films like that come out with different, like I think it's for something like Halloween. I love Jamie Lee Curtis, and I love that these movies keep coming out, and I like that they should continue. But where I got stuck on this, and it's because I've been thinking about this movie a lot lately, is Nosferatu, and how they keep remaking it, and there's so many different versions of it, and how they're making another version of it, and I think I'm kind of over it. I don't need another version of that. I mean, it's all basically Dracula anyway, and I think it's a little bit tired, and specifically the director that's doing this version, I just feels I'm really reluctant. I don't have the best vibes and idea about what's to come.
All right, Alicia, how about you?
Yeah, I also don't tend to watch a lot of like horror movies that come out in theaters, and unless I'm really planning to sit down and watch the whole franchise. I might watch the first one like at home or something if I'm in a spooky mood, but I don't watch a lot of horror. But I've seen all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and up to 5, not beyond 5. But I saw them all when I was like a kid. and really liked them and loved them up to the point where they finished, because there's a whole there's a whole thing. I see head shaking, but there's a whole big mythology and story behind it, and God is involved, and it goes places. But I don't know that it went any place interesting after that. So I think like they should have probably just capped it let it end after the 5th one.
Okay. Well, our next episode is Laura's 5th pick. Laura, do you want to tell us about that movie?
Yeah. It's Raging Bull, directed by Martin Scorsese, released in 1980. And it's available with a subscription on Hoopla, or you can rent it via Apple, Amazon, Google, or anything else. You can rent stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So that is it for this episode of the Stereoactive Movie Club. We invite you to join us in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Stereoactive Movie Club. You can also email us at stereoactivemovieclub@gmail.com, and you can subscribe to the show just about anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you have a moment, please do rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or anywhere else that allows you to do that. It helps others to find the show, and we would be very appreciative. Also, you can get updates about the show by following Stereoactive Media on Instagram or Twitter. Thanks for listening.
Stereoactive Movie Club.
This podcast is produced by Stereoactive Media.